We are going to go ahead and get started. First things first, if you're watching this, you guys, on the YouTubes, do make sure that you click on the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified when new videos come on. If you're watching somewhere else after the video, go to YouTube, search my first and last name, subscribe, click the bell. Here's why. Aside from the fact that you're going to learn from me and you're going to learn the right way to do things, right? So you're actually successful. Besides that, what you're going to do is one person every single week is going to win a prize. So all you have to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel and comment on YouTube videos. That's all that it takes. No purchase necessary. We just give you stuff. How's that sound? Let me go ahead and get out of there. Claudette, good morning. I see you there, lady. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. Corrine, good morning to you. What we're going to talk about today, you guys, is how to turn your whole life around today. I remember whenever I was, oh my gosh, it's been so long ago now, but it's also still clear as day. I think a lot of us have these moments in our lives that it seems like forever ago, but then in the same moment, it seems like yesterday, right? I remember sitting in the office, which was in the basement of this bar that I worked at. And I remember being called in on a day off to talk to the general manager of the bar that I worked at. And for those of you that don't know, I have a very long history of working in the service industry. So both being a server and bartender and all sorts of stuff. Okay. This was my last bartending job. No, second to last that I ever had. But I remember getting called into his office and sitting there in front of him and having him say to me, I think that you're a fantastic person. I think that you have a heart of gold, but we have to part ways here. And I was like, oh, why, right? Because for me, that job was all I had. I had just gotten divorced. I was living in the basement of somebody who was so gracious to let me live in their basement. I was living in the basement of their house. I had nothing, right? The husband that I was previously married to, like, moved me all over the place. Not moved me. It wasn't like against my will, right? But we moved all over the place for different, because he was a restaurant manager and he would go and help out a restaurant and then go somewhere else and help out another restaurant and so on and so forth. Those in the restaurant industry understand what that, he was like a fixer kind of. And for me, being the wife of a fixer was not great on the job search. Every time we would move to new, there was one year that we moved 7 times into 7 different cities in 1 year. And for me, I couldn't, you get to the 3rd or the 4th city within a year, and then people are eventually like, how do I know you're going to stay? I'm like, I know I'm probably not, right? It's not easy to get hired anywhere. Anyway, I digress. But when I was sitting in the basement with my manager at that point, and he was telling me that he had to let me go, here's the reason he had to let me go. He had to let me go because I was drinking on the job the night before. I was a raging alcoholic, you guys. I had a very, very bad problem with alcohol. And it lost me the job that was making me any money at all. And so in that moment, I lost my job. And I lost pretty much what I felt like was my life, because I didn't feel like I had any skills to bring to the world. I didn't feel like I had anything I was able to offer the world that would allow me to get any other job. And then I was like, well, I just got fired from a bar. How am I going to go get another job at a bar? Now what do I do? And so what I did is I went home and I sat in not my basement, but the friend that let me stay in their basement. And I just sat there. And I remember just staring at the wall and thinking, like, what happened? what happened to the, on paper as a little kid, I had so much potential. I don't have complaints about how I grew up. Like my parents took very good care of me and they loved me very much. On paper, I was going to be all right. But then I made some choices that landed me in some pretty weird situations, right? And so now I want to talk about how we turn that around, because I don't talk about that part of my life that much just because I don't want to sit in it that much. But I do want for you guys that are watching this to understand that Martha hasn't had it easy her entire life. That there have been times where Martha was like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? I don't have a penny to my name. I remember going to a gas pump and I had 77 cents and putting in 77 cents worth of gas because that's all I had. And you guys, I went to the counter and I gave them the change, and that was it. I didn't even have a full dollar. So now we're going to talk about how we turn that around. I believe strongly that we go through the things that we go through in our lives because we're strong enough to get through it. But not only that, because when we get through it, we can show other people how to get through it. I believe that very strongly. So now let's talk about that, okay? Sound good, you guys? Okay. So here's how I turned it around. I'm going to give you 3 points here. Okay, you guys? Very first point. And then if you guys have questions, feel free to go ahead and ask the questions in the comments, and I will answer the questions for you at the end. Okay. Number 1, I let people in instead of keeping my guard up. My guard was up. I mean, when you're freshly divorced, when you're, and there were some negative things in there that naturally make a woman scared. Let's just say that. There are things that I could have just left my guard up. But the very first thing I did in order to be able to turn my life around is I let my guard down at least for one person. I let my guard down for a person that was seeing things in me that I couldn't see in myself. I let my guard down for Mike. That's when he entered my world, was around that time. And I let my guard down. So it wasn't so much like nobody can come in. If nobody can come in, you remain unchanged. Understand that about your life and understand that about who you are as a person. If you don't allow anybody else to interact with you or into your world, you remain unchanged. Now, if you're happy with who you are and the way that you show up in the world, then sure, remain unchanged. But I don't think that any of us are designed to remain unchanged. I think there's always better. I think there's always more impact to be had. Okay? So the first thing that I had to do, which was probably the hardest thing, I remember it. I remember it as like, it was like bricks and mortar, right? It wasn't like a sand wall that you're like, well, okay, well, that's not a big deal. It was like chipping away at a wall. Because I had to protect myself. If it was just me and my dog at that point, I had to protect myself. I had nothing, which left me, in my opinion, at that time of myself, I felt like I was extremely vulnerable and I was extremely susceptible to a lot of negative stuff. And so I had walls up like crazy because I had to be safe. I didn't know what to do, right? And I didn't know who I could trust. There were people I was thinking I could trust that I turned out that I wasn't able to. And so then more walls came up. So the very first thing that I did is I let my guard down for at least one person who was speaking life over me. So if this is you and you're in this place of sort of feeling isolated, or like maybe you're isolating yourself off from other people, then I'm talking to you. If there is somebody who is speaking life over you, let your guard down for them. Because that person has been led to you for a reason. Let them in. Okay? Important. That's probably the single most thing, the catalyst that changed everything. Okay? Number 2, I got honest with myself about where I was and then also about where I wanted to go. Here's the thing. A lot of people will say that they're being honest with themselves. They'll say, well, you know, here's where I am, and then here's where I want to go, except they're not fully honest with themselves. They're very optimistic about their current circumstances, which isn't honest. Optimistic is rose-colored glasses. That's fine. But if we're going to say where we are right now, we have to be so completely honest, because where we're going is going to require a journey. And if you're not honest with where you're at, so if you're really right here, but the way that you are saying, like where you're saying that you are is right here, and where you want to go is right here, then your expectation of what it's going to take to get here is going to be from here to here. But what really has to happen is from here to here. And what that does to a person is the journey is longer than what they expect for it to be. And so then they get mad at the journey. They get mad that it's taking so long. What is going on here? You have to go through things that you think that you've already gone through. You think you're already past that stuff, but you have to go through it. It's not wrong. What that journey isn't wrong. You weren't honest with yourself about where you were to begin with. You're not going to be able to get where you want to go quickly and efficiently if you can't just be honest with yourself about where you are. I had to be honest with myself. I was an alcoholic. I had problems. I had trust issues. I had abandonment issues. I had a lot of things that I had to work through in order to be able to love freely. I wasn't able to do it before because I had so much fear wrapped up in relationships and people leaving me. And then I had so much anxiety and depression and panic that I self-medicated with alcohol. But I had to get to the root of all of that. I had to get honest about where I was. Here's who I am. Now I'm ready to change. All of the dressings off, right? All of the hiding, all of the layers of everything where I'm trying to protect myself against everything outward. Everything had to come off, and I had to just sit there like, this is me. This is really me. And I want to be here. And I want to be able to help. And I want to be able to help people like me. I don't want other people to have to sit in that situation and not know what they're going to do. I want people to be able to feel empowered regardless of the mess or the situation that they sit in currently. I want people to understand their value and their worth. But you guys, how am I going to help anybody else do that if I can't do it for myself? I had to shed everything off. I had to completely pour my cup out. If you're in Big Think, you know what I'm talking about. I had to pour it out to be able to fill it up with something else. Okay? So step 2 is I got honest with myself, both about where I really was and then where I wanted to go. Okay? A lot of people try to bypass this one because it's not easy. It's not easy to look at yourself and at that scary stuff, at that stuff that's been cranking on you for a really long time, that feels real. I want you to understand that it only feels real because it's been happening for so long. Your brain believes that it's real, but it's not. You're able to work through that stuff. We do that in Big Think, okay? Now, number 3, I created daily routines that I implemented. I implemented the ideas that I got from books that I have read over the years. So Think and Grow Rich, The Laws of Success, Power of Positive Thinking, any book on neuroplasticity, all of these books that are like 600, 800, 1,000 pages, they're like lots of pages. Read. Number 3 is read. Don't act like you're too busy to read. You're not too busy to grow. Okay? If you can watch a Netflix show that's typically 22 minutes or 44 minutes, you can read a couple chapters of a book and be actually progressing in your life instead of whatever Netflix is doing for you. That's a choice. That's a choice. Our life is made up of choices. Just so you know, heads up, our life is made up of choice after choice after choice after choice. Okay? So basically what I did is I created daily action items out of the books that I read. So whenever I would read a book, I would internalize it, and then I would say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what it sounds like should happen here. And so I created daily activities out of all of these books. And then I would tweak them and I would change them and that sort of thing. And then I ended up with my actual daily action items. That's in Big Think. Just so you know, Big Think is filled with daily action items, the who's it's, the what's it's, the why of all of this gold from the history of self-development and growth and rewiring your brain, right? That's what Big Think is, just so you know. But that was number 3, read and then implement. Okay, so again, number 1 was let people in that are going to talk life or speak life over you. Okay. Number 2, get honest with yourself about where you are and where you want to go. That's a big one. Number 3, read. Read and actually pay attention to what you're reading and apply what you're reading. Okay. The most successful people on the planet read between 1 and 3 books a week. That's not by accident. It's not a weird piece of data. That's like a rule. Okay. So if you want to be that, I mean, doesn't it stand to reason that you also need to be reading? Yes. Yes, you do. So the next step for you, if you're watching this and you're like, I need that kind of change in my life. Maybe you're not as extreme as I was, because I was very like, it was extreme. It felt extreme anyway, but maybe you're worse off. Maybe you even feel more extreme than where I was. Because there are definitely people that had it way worse off than I did too. But if that's you, the next step with me, with what I can offer you, would be Big Think. The link is in the description of this video here. I have it at half off today. You're able to jump into that and get going today. You'll start going through it. You'll start unraveling all of that extra stuff sitting on top of you. You unravel all of that. You'll be able to empty the garbage out and then fill yourself up with truth. And all of that sounds ambiguous, and I understand that. But it's true, and it's real, and it's how you change your life. If you're in Big Think already, give me a heck yes. And tell people what it's done for you. I know there's a lot of people in Big Think already, and it's just, there are people that have done self-development for years, And they've done Big Think and they're like, oh my gosh, this is it. Because it is. Big Think is going to change the world, period. You don't have to be a business owner. You don't have to be anything like that. You just have to want to change your world. And then I'm even going to be adding things to it like Big Think Family, Big Think Teens, Big Think Kids. That's all going to be added to it for no extra cost. It's just going to be added into it because everybody needs access to this stuff. The world was never taught how to think. We were taught what to be scared of. We were never ever taught how to think and how to think big and how to create things, how to co-create things with our creator, right? So Big Think has 17 modules of gold. So you're not going to have to read 20 to 50, 600-page books that seem to be written in Old English. Some of them you read them and you're like, man, I don't even know if this is the same language. I'm kind of picking it up, but this is like not easy, right? So I pull the action items out of all of them and then I tweak them for modern day use. So for you today, I have actual action items, not ambiguous. They're like, do this, do that, do this, do that, wash, rinse, repeat. Do this, do that, do this, do that, wash, rinse, repeat, and watch your life change. Seriously. I'm not somebody who's had it easy my entire life. But I am somebody who took the bull by the horns. I am somebody who took the reins and took control of her own mind so she could be co-creating this stuff with her creator, right? I'm just making sure I've said everything that I meant to say. The funny thing at this point, you guys, I did say everything. The funny thing at this point is as I was sitting in the office, the basement office of that bar that smelled so musty and there were Sixers all around. Those of you bartenders know what I'm talking about. There were empty cases of stuff and kegs and whatever. It was just, you know, bottom of a bar, basement of a bar. The interesting thing is now I see on my social media, I see some of those same people that fired me, and they had every right to fire me. They made a good choice in firing me. I wasn't a good employee. I was an alcoholic working as a bartender. Not a great idea. Okay? I'm not saying anything. They should have fired me. It's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. But now they follow me. They follow me on how to build their own business or how to change their own lives. Those same people. There is never a time in your life that you cannot have redemption. There is never a day in your life that you can't turn it all the way around. Never. It's available to you the same way it was available to me. I'm just here to make it easier for you. What questions do you guys have? Man, I'm over in time again. Megan, Big Think is epic. I can clearly see how I'll get to the life I've always dreamed of now. Ah, yeah. Greta, oh yeah, Big Think is pushing me through all the hard stuff right now, the deep hidden lies that need to be rooted out. You guys, we all have them. It's just, are you going to let them define and structure the rest of your life or not? That's the difference. And that's a choice between, am I just going to lay back and let life happen to me, or am I going to show up? We are all here for a reason. I was born in 1980 for a reason. I was born to be where I am right now, who I am for a reason, and so are you. You have to uncover it. You have to be able to get to the root of it. You have to. It's your obligation. We didn't just come here to ride the waves. You're not going to be happy doing that. You'll be happy when you find out the reason you're here, and then you start to live it out. That's where happiness happens. The link is in the description of this video. I have to pop out and take my mom to go to the dentist. So, love you guys. See you later.